All right. Welcome to this week's Megaport Live Tech Drop-In. This week, since it's been a little while, at least since I've done one of these drop-in sessions, I thought we might just run through a bit of a product update for some of the things that have come out recently, some of the changes and things like that, but in a bit of a practical way, stuff that you might actually be able to use and what some of the impact of these things are. So we'll do the usual intro a little bit, just in case anyone's not already familiar with Megaport. Run through what network as a service is, what Megaport is, all that kind of thing. We'll run through the updates, and then we'll jump into the portal and have a look at what some of those updates actually are and how you can use them. So Megaport is a network as a service company. So network as a service provider. Basically what that means is we provide connectivity services between clouds and data centers and from data centers to clouds. And we do it in a way that aligns with the cloud model. So we try to make these things all available on demand and self-service, portal and API driven, all those things that you would expect with working with a cloud provider for compute services. We try to do that for the network layer, basically. So you can order circuits on demand in a portal. They're all available straight away. You can scale up and down anytime that you need to. But it's for private connectivity, internet connectivity, that kind of thing, the network space. So we try to do for networking what the cloud providers do for compute services. The first update, which is a little more of a ecosystem type one, is that I have to update this slide. There's actually now a few more than this. So there's now 300 plus cloud on ramps. There's now 1,000 plus data centers. So I have to update this slide at some point. We also have Megaport Internet available as one of the things you can connect to once you have that port in place. It's been available for a little while, but there's been a pretty big amount of growth and new features and more capacity and all that kind of thing in the internet connectivity space. So you can use Megaport to provide an internet connection, a normal internet connection separate from our Instant Exchange product. And that's been a pretty popular, pretty big growth area. So first update is capacity. So pretty standard for a product update kind of thing. Essentially, we now have 400 gig ports available in some locations. We now have 100 gig VXCs available in some locations. We have 25 gig VXCs available in a lot of locations, probably most locations by now. We can do up to 25 gig. So previously we were basically doing 10 gig VXCs and 100 gig in some locations. And the internet service that we offer initially was available in speeds up to 10 gig per second, is now available in up to 25 gig per second. And that's continuing to grow as well. So I guess keep an eye on that if you are after more capacity in that area. So the next set of things is about the MVE product. So there's a new ordering workflow in the portal, which we will have a look at when we jump into the demo section. Basically, the UI and the sort of workflow that you use to deploy an MVE in the portal has changed to give you a bit more visibility and control over how it's deployed and cater for some of the new functionality. Larger sizes are also available. So you can now order MVE in up to 32 cores and 128 gig of RAM. Just to kind of cover some really high performance, high throughput requirements. Most of the other sizes are still available. The exception there is the 12-core version. There was a 12-core available, which is now no longer available. If you haven't already deployed, they'll stay there. But now it's basically 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 with the associated amounts of RAM. There's also a few more vendors on the list. So we've added Checkpoint, we've added Juniper SSR, we've added Anapaya, which some people may not have heard of. It's pretty big in Europe with the new protocol, Scion protocol, which is a whole thing. It's worth looking into if you're interested. And Meraki is available as a beta. We are still working with Cisco to try and get some production level firmware that both Megaport and Cisco are kind of happy to roll with. For now, it's available as a beta. If you do want to try it out, hopefully you should have a production version fairly shortly. And another thing which seems pretty small, but it actually it's pretty good if you've worked with MVEs, because sometimes the use cases or the way things are deployed changes over time. And previously you weren't able to rename the virtual NICs in the portal. Now you can change those names when you need to, which can be pretty useful. It can kind of help tie things together and tidy things up as you have this MVE in place longer term. MCR, also a bunch of changes there. So some of these have come out, over the last couple of months. But to give you a bit of a wrap up, basically larger sizes. So for a while, MCR was available in sizes up to 10 gig. So all those sizes are still available. So 1 gig, 2.5, 5, and 10 gig are still available. But we now also can do MCR in 25 gig, 50 gig, and 100 gig sizes. We added packet filter to MCR, so you can do layer 3 and 4 ACLs. I did do a video on that one to demo that one earlier on. So if you go and check out the YouTube channel, you can find the details on that. But just to give a bit of a wrap up of the capabilities, you can now do basic firewalling directly on MCR, and IPsec tunnels is a recent addition as well. So you can now terminate IPsec tunnels directly on MCR. So previously, if you needed to terminate IPsec tunnels, you would have had to go with MVE. So we've had some customers basically who would have liked to use MCR, but they needed to terminate VPNs either from branch sites or to do IPsec overlays into cloud environments or something like that. And so then they would kind of go with MVE instead, but maybe they wanted to keep the very as a service approach, the very sort of managed, hands-off, one-click type of experience they get with MCR. So we can now do that directly on MCR. So that's been pretty popular straight off the bat. Mostly we see customers using that as a way to tunnel in from their branch sites to MCR to then access clouds and data centers, and using it as kind of an aggregator, VPN aggregator. Why you might want to do that rather than using the cloud providers VPN services, for example, is that you get the lower egress rate because you're coming out of the cloud via private connectivity. So you get that lower per gig egress cost compared to the internet egress cost. But you also get to sidestep some of the limitations. So MCR can do pretty high throughput, pretty high performance IPsec, certainly substantially higher than a lot of the VPN services offered by the cloud providers on a per tunnel basis. So if you are hitting those per tunnel throughput limits with the cloud provider VPN services, you could look at terminating those VPNs onto MCR and then using Direct Connect or Express Route or Google Partner Interconnect or Fast Connect into the cloud environment or into your data centers even. If you need to do high throughput VPNs into the data center, maybe you're limited by the size of the internet connection at the DC, maybe you're limited by the firewalls you have at the DC. This gives you a really cost-effective, really easy, low management overhead way to terminate high throughput IPsec tunnels. The other use case we have seen of this is some customers want to do IPsec overlays. So they want to have this MCR sitting between, let's say, Azure and AWS, but they want to do an encryption overlay. They want to build IPsec tunnels over the top of that whole path. That's the other use case that we've seen so far with IPsec on MCR. When it did launch, which was just a little while ago, it was only maybe 2 months ago, we basically bundled in 10 tunnels. So you can buy these tunnels in a pack. So you could buy 10 could kind of enable a feature, you'd get 10 tunnels that you could create onto the MCR very, very quickly. We had customers want more than that, so we can now do up to 30 tunnels on an MCR to give a bit more scale, especially in those scenarios where you've got branch sites coming in. And another recent one is BGP alerts. So in the portal, you can configure the notifications that you want to receive. And there's a bunch of stuff in there that you can kind of tick on and off to receive email notifications when things happen. So a port goes down or something like that, or something moves, new services ordered, things change in the portal. You can turn on and off notifications for all of those services. And you can now also do that for the BGP sessions on the MCR itself. You've always been able to do it for the VXCs, but sometimes there's types of events where the BGP might go down, but the VXC itself at a layer 2 level is still up. So you can now enable BGP alerts for BGP sessions on MCR in the portal. So some other bits and pieces. Term options is a big one. Since we started offering terms in the portal, 12, 24, and 36-month terms in the portal, probably maybe 2-ish years ago, we've had customers ask for options for even longer terms. So we now offer 48 and 60-month terms in the portal as well. So you just can select them in the same list as you do for the other options. There have been quite a lot of improvements around the activity log in the portal, which we will have a look at in a moment when we jump into the demo. Basically, it's a much cleaner way to be able to see a lot more information about the events that have happened within the portal, either on a per user basis or across the whole company, the whole tenant. There's some improvements there about how we filter logs, how we display things, and things like that we'll check out. There have been a whole ton of changes and improvements to the quote tool. You may or may not know that there is a quote tool. If you haven't seen it, it's worth having a look at. Basically, it's a separate portal, a separate site that you can log into, that you can build quotes. So kind of a configure price quote type tool without having to actually provide the technical details that you would need to put those items in the cart in the portal. So if you've used the portal, basically you can go through the portal, you can add items to the cart, you can order services, they'll go in the cart and you can see the prices and the total. But because you're going through the ordering process, you need to provide information. You need to provide account IDs, IP addresses, and things like that, which aren't really required if all you want to see is the price, if you don't actually want to order the service. So the quote tool exists separately to basically allow you to click through and create a group of services and see a quote for those services without having to provide all the technical details up front. The limit for the API keys. So initially, you could create API keys in the portal if you want to build your own automations. Initially, you could create 5 API keys. That limit has now been increased to 100. There were some backend changes that basically facilitated us being able to increase that pretty far. This is pretty useful because it means that you can align with some best practices more easily. Like you want to maybe have a separate API key for each of your automations or each of your customer side environments. So you can kind of very granularly control which key gets used. If they get deleted, if they get cleaned up or something, you can remove the keys without impacting your other services. So being able to create a whole ton of API keys is pretty useful for people building automations. On automations, there have been a whole heap of updates to the Terraform provider. It is, I guess, depending on how long it's been since you looked at the Terraform provider, there was a full rewrite a little while ago. But even in this new version, there have been a whole load of updates. So new things added, like new resource types and things like that to give you a lot more flexibility and control over how you deploy things, a bunch of updates to align with new product features that have become available, some other kind of Terraform quality of life stuff to make it a little easier to manage, including the fact that it's compatible with OpenTofu as well if you happen to use that rather than Terraform. For Megaport Internet, thus far, if you order the internet service, you'd get a /31 public IP to use in that service, a single IP on the customer side, the other end of the /31 on the Megaport side. We did support PGP, we did support providing additional IP addresses, but you kind of had to log a support ticket. You can now request PGP configuration and additional IP addresses in the portal. It's not immediate because there's still kind of a human in the loop because we need to do some validation around, does the customer actually own these IP addresses? Is it the right ASN? All the other little bits and pieces to sort of make sure we don't advertise things out to the internet that are going to cause problems or that we shouldn't. But there are buttons in the portal now that you can use to handle that process, which hopefully we'll get a chance to see in the demo section as well. And cross-connect ordering has been a bit of a thing. So we added this in the portal a little while ago. Essentially what this is for the most part, customers will order a port in the data center they're in from Megaport. We'll provision the port and we'll provide an LOA. And then the customer goes to the data center and orders the cross-connect to Megaport, right, to that LOA. Usually that's probably still the best way to do it. But there are some situations where the customer either can't or doesn't want to order that cross-connect in that direction. They want Megaport to order the cross-connect in the other direction, right? So rather than us provide the LOA and the customer order the cross-connect to Megaport, the customer wants Megaport to order the cross-connect to them. There's a couple of different reasons why that might be the case. Often it's when the customer doesn't actually have a rack in that data center. They're connecting to some third-party service, a carrier circuit, something like that. Sometimes it's just a kind of billing thing. Sometimes it's easier to have those things all bundled together. But you can now order cross-connects in quite a lot. So most data centers, you can have your request Megaport order those cross-connects on your behalf. So rather than Megaport provide the LOA and the customer order the cross-connect, essentially you choose the cross-connect option when ordering the port, and then you will provide the LOA to Megaport. Megaport will order the cross-connect towards the customer or whatever it happens to be, a third-party carrier circuit or something like that. All right, so we will jump into the portal and have a look at some of these things. So this is a demo account. So right now you can see there's two ports in this account, one port in Adelaide, one port in Sydney. So I'll have a look through some of these things. So firstly, we will have a look in here at the user activity section. So there's now this kind of aggregated per user activity log, but there's also a company activity log. So there's an activity log here that will show you all of the activities for all users within this tenant, within this Megaport account. And there's a bunch of options here around filtering. There's a bunch of things you can do here around seeing more information for a particular event. So this is pretty useful and a lot more usable, I guess, than it was. There's a lot more things surfaced here than previously, so this can be pretty handy. What we will also look at is the new MVE ordering workflow. So as you can see, there's quite a few additional vendors starting to show up in here, but there's also a whole new workflow. So when ordering an MVE now, you'll see this this page. So if we maybe search for a data center where you want to deploy this, you can see here that we're listing the sizes that are available in that particular data center. And you can also filter by zone, right? So currently in the blue zone in SY1, we've got these sizes available. And so you can really see, you can choose which zone you want to deploy into, in which data center, and you can see which sizes are available in that zone, in that DC. So you kind of get full visibility about what's going on and where things are going. choose the size, choose the term here, and you can see 48 and 60-month terms are in the list. And then we go to this next page here, and then this is where you provide the sort of in-guest details. So these are the same fields as before. The workflow's just been changed a little bit to make it a bit clearer and surface some more information. So we'll fill this out. Down here again, you can add the additional VNICs, and this is the field here that you can now change, right? So this used to be static and non-editable, but this is now editable later on. So if you do have to change the architecture or change your use cases, you can update these to match, which is pretty handy. It makes it a lot clearer, a lot easier to manage. Okay. So you now get to this little summary screen at the end of the wizard here. We provide a name, and we'll go add. As previously, we get prompted to create an internet connection for the MVE. I won't order one right now, but basically now we get back to that same process. So that wizard, that workflow has changed. The end result is the same, and most of the fields you have to provide are the same. Just the wizard is a little bit easier, and it's a little bit easier to see what's available where and how things are being deployed. All right. For MCR, there have been a couple of videos on this already. So if you want to see more information about IPsec on MCR, definitely check out the YouTube channel, and there are a bunch of options there. But basically, when you order the MCR, you can choose here to add the IPsec functionality at that point. Okay, and you can choose how many tunnels you want to include down here. So it's pretty straightforward. Cool. Another thing to maybe point out here that's not brand new, but you may not have seen previously, is the service status page. So this section of the portal here will basically show any current or recently resolved outages that have happened, or any maintenance events. So you can see in here any upcoming scheduled maintenance events, any that are currently ongoing or recently completed. So this can kind of give you a view into anything that's sort of happening at the Megaport level in a single aggregated single source of truth type of place. So historically, we've sent email alerts for all this kind of stuff, and we still do, but this kind of gives you a sort of single source of truth where you can go in one central location and you can see all of the things that might be happening. So whether there's any active outages or there's upcoming maintenance or anything like that, so you don't have to kind of track emails, which can get really difficult as you have more and more services. So if you imagine if you have an account with 10 or 50 or 100 or 500 services, you will get emails for outage notifications for individual services that say that these particular services are going to be impacted by this particular maintenance on this particular date. They can be pretty hard to track and manage. So this gives you a way to be able to see all that information centrally in a way that's kind of always up to date and always available. All right. Well, there's also a manage order section here for partner accounts, but I think that we'll probably leave that because it's probably worth doing a whole separate video for the partner side of things. Cool. And in here, the API key generator. So this is basically where you can generate API keys. And as I said previously, you'd have up to 5 keys per account. Now it's up to 100 keys per account, which gives you a lot more control over how things interact with the account, how your automations and integrations work, which is really nice. So you can see there's two keys here in this account. It's a pretty standard process. You create the key, give it a name, it'll show you the secret, and then it'll kind of never show you that secret again because we don't store it essentially. So you can see here the names, but you can't see the actual secret associated with these keys. and you can provide the role for the keys as well to govern the permissions. Um, I definitely would suggest for almost everyone, this is the way to do integrations rather than trying to use username and password. It's definitely a lot easier. It's more secure. So if you do have username and password based integrations, definitely check out the API keys here, especially now that you can create a lot more of them and have custom roles. Okay, so we don't have a great deal of time left. One thing I might do, let me just check whether there is any Q&A stuff. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. So we did have a question here. Basically, the question was, can you add IPsec to an existing MCR? Yeah, you can, right? So that in the example here was part of the MCR ordering workflow, but you can actually add it. If you already have an MCR, you can basically go to that MCR and enable that IPsec functionality. You don't have to redeploy. So that's, it's pretty straightforward to just turn that on and be able to use it straight away. What I might do, since we have a couple of minutes left, I do want to show one other thing very quickly. So the Terraform provider is fully supported, use it in production. There's a whole support workflow and everything behind that. There is also another tool that I sort of wanted to just mention, despite the fact that this is a very, very early alpha. It's currently not supported at all, but it does exist, and it maybe gives you an idea of some of the things that we're doing behind the scenes. And if you do want to try it out, feel free to try it out, but it is definitely an alpha. It may completely change at any time and is currently not supported in that, we're not going to kind of do support tickets regarding this thing. So there is now a Megaport CLI. It gives you a bit of a middle ground between writing full custom integrations and using the portal. So there's cases where customers might want to do things in a bit more of an automated or at least command-driven or scriptable way, but they don't necessarily want to write full automations. So the Megaport CLI basically provides some services. So if we run this, it gives you some information about the CLI, and it kind of lets you do things like this, ports list. And this is looking at that same account that we were seeing in the portal a moment ago. So you can see there the two ports that we had in the portal. It does support changes and updates to services and a bunch of other bits and pieces. Yeah, so just something interesting to give you an idea of some of the things that we're kind of also looking at in the background. If you want to try it out, feel free to try it out. Probably try it out against the staging environment just in case. It does support setting the environment that you want to work with, so you can use this against the staging portal. But yeah, feel free to try it out. If you're interested, let us know, and then we can kind of guide where the development goes from there. Probably just to mention regarding the staging environment, with the API keys, they're per environment. So with the usernames and passwords, if you have credentials already, you've got to log into the portal. You can automatically log into the staging environment. So that's portal-staging.megaport.com. The user accounts sync across, right? So if you've got access to one, you've got access to the other, use the same credentials. However, the API keys don't sync across. So you do have to create a new separate API key in the staging account and manage those keys separately to the ones you have for the production environment. Otherwise, we're pretty much out of time. But I just want to quickly show this this page here. So this is the quoting tool. So if you go to pricing.megaport.com, you can log in there. That's where you'll find that quoting tool. It's going to be useful for some people, not for others, but it does exist if you want to check it out. Cool. All right. So we're at half past, so we're out of time. Yeah, thanks for joining. Like usual, this will be available on the Megaport SA YouTube channel afterwards. You can go and check it out there. If you do happen to be watching it there, feel free to leave a comment so that we can know what to cover in future videos. As I mentioned, there have been a couple of videos on the IPsec functionality recently. So they're on that channel as well. So go and check those out. There's a video, at least one, on the packet filtering functionality as well, and other bits and pieces. So if you keep an eye on that channel, new stuff gets added all the time. Yeah, let us know what you want to see next time. Thanks for coming.